So, somebody brought me to task the other day for saying that a woman in a commercial who had like humongous pupils had crazy eyes. If you don't know what that is, that's essentially when a person's pupils are so large, their eyes are so dilated that it kind of looks like they're getting a colonoscopy without like Novocaine. Supervillains have it, Bugs Bunny has it. The term is mydriasis. You don't need to remember that though. My protester's objection to the use of the term is that this is the term that many men use to describe women with extra large eyes who may look somewhat surprised all the time. It's just a physical feature, and then people say that you know that a woman is crazy when they got the crazy eyes. I looked it up on Urban Dictionary, crazy eyes, and this is what it says. You can Google it. You all have smartphones. When you look in a girl's eyes and you just know that bitch is fucking crazy. Don't use Urban Dictionary. So she goes on to say, like, the only time she's heard this term is when it's attributed to women, and usually the accusers are bros. And I'm like, no, that's impossible. What about that dude, James Holmes, the guy who shot up the movie theater? That's totally something. And then there's, yeah, that's the only guy. That's the only guy I can think of. So she went on to talk about how bros, people in her past say they have experience with crazy eyes, and they usually say things like, she kept hounding me, and we met last week, and I got a text from her every day. Or like, why did you want to know what's going on with us? We only fucked like 3 times. It's nothing like crazy, like actual crazy. Like, oh, she poured tar and feathers all over my car when I said I thought her chicken French was a little dry. That's crazy. Thank you. Or like, it was only a week and she made an anatomically correct life-size model of me with rabbit ears on the genitals. That's a little nuts. Or she broke up with me and then she showed up at my door at 2 a.m. How did she get in? You have to pause to get in. That actually happened. So, hearing that, I thought about the term crazy eyes, and I went into a little introspection. I first started using the term crazy eyes when this woman, she was like an astronaut and she was wearing a diaper, and she was trying to find a jilted lover. That's the first time I heard the term. The second term was when this woman was a runaway bride. I think her name was Jennifer Wilbanks. She was a runaway bride. She disappeared from Georgia. She showed up in New Mexico. She said she was kidnapped by some Hispanic people, and it turned out that the story was completely made up. But it had everything that every media outlet wants. Pretty white women missing, a couple of brown people doing it. It was just like gold for all the networks. Problem is, it was all fake. And then she had the crazy eyes. This doctor was on CNN, and I usually trust CNN. I used to trust CNN. This woman doctor comes on and she's talking about mydriasis and how people have certain psychoses because they have crazy eyes, extra dilated, blah, 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 blah. And I sat there and I was like, yeah, crazy eyes is a real thing. But then I remembered every marginalized group in history has their Clarence Thomas, and this woman was the Clarence Thomas of women. If you don't know who Clarence Thomas is, you all failed high school. So there's a big prickly history with women and science, and people just attributing things in psychology and in medical history. Both industries have this thing where they like to diagnose women, kind of treat them like machines more than like people. Around the turn of the century, if you've ever heard of hysteria, it's essentially crazy eyes, but with a vagina involved. you know, you want to know math, you want to like think for yourself, you want to question like a social norm, then automatically you're crazy. People have been lobotomized because of it. They've been institutionalized. And I'm like, just going through the history, I was like, oh my God, that's terrible. And I've been using this term. I'm skipping a paragraph, I'm sorry, because this one's pointless. So this has happened to black people as well. This has happened to Mexican Americans. This has basically happened to every marginalized group. It's just a matter of, you know, science and minorities have like a really bad history, and it sucks because science is awesome. It is. So this is kind of somewhat of an apology to, well, first the woman that I offended, and then like anybody else who I said had crazy eyes. It's pretty much about as valid as like phrenology. If you don't know what phrenology is, look it up. It's really stupid. It's about like bumps and shit on your head. I don't know. The only phrenology you really need to like heed is the Roos Fifth. And that's it. Thank you again. Good record. With terms and phrases like being thrown around like crazy, the term crazy eyes kind of needs to go unless you're actually talking about somebody who's crazy. So, you know, it's an attack on people's characters, it's an attack on women's characters, and it's pretty much as bad as slut shaming. I now call anybody who calls anybody else crazy guy cray shaming because it's pretty much the same thing. The only time I'll ever use the term somebody's, you know, some woman is crazy if she actually does make a life-size anatomically correct paper mache model of me and then puts rabbit ears on the genitals. Unless she's an artist, then, you know, who am I to judge?